Alright, so now that we've got it all disassembled, we are ready to clean up these contact points on the main video chip here. This is actually one of the cleanest right out of the box that I've seen. Usually they look like this all the way around, where this thermal compound has just kind of gushed out from these heat cycles. So we'll take some of that and we'll put that back up on the chip so that it can properly cool once we put it back together, because it doesn't need to be down on all those caps. It needs to be cooling the main processor here. So you're ever so gently just kind of scoop it up there. Alright, so got some back on there, and this is looking really, really clean. I like to just take an old toothbrush and just kind of give it a little scrub. Get those nice and clean. It just kind of absorbs up into the bristles. You know, I see people use all sorts of isopropyl alcohol and all that in there. I'm sure that that's fine and works, but not always necessary depending on how dirty it is. The next thing you want to do is grab your ribbon cable. So this is the one labeled V2 because this is a version 2 switch. You can tell it's a version 2, 1 by the serial number, but 2, when you get in here, these capacitors will be going sideways towards the edges. And then when you take your ribbon cable and you stick it in here and you get everything lined up, you'll see that those capacitors will now make contact with these metal pins. So if you, using the help of your cheap eBay microscope here, if you kind of push down on these pins, kind of helps lock it in a little bit. Boom. So you've got to solder both sides of these caps right here, and then you've got to make at least one of these ground connections. So we'll heat up the soldering iron and I'll show you how that's done in just a second. Okay, for this section I've got my trusty $12 Amazon special soldering iron with the ultra fine tip. Then I've got some really good liquid flux in a syringe. This is absolutely crucial, so don't skimp out on this part. So I've got the soldering iron preheating to, I'm going to set to 682 degrees Fahrenheit. And it just constantly wants to fall off the table and burn my house down. There we go. So what we need to do is take our syringe here and just ever so lightly that's a ton. You don't need that much. Just get a little dab of flux going. Perfect. Now what that does is that helps really get the solder flowing here. So I just like to dip a little bit of that onto the tip of the soldering iron. Then I'll put a little bit of solder on the tip of the iron, and from here it's all just looking at your monitor and just ever so carefully good. Another dab of solder on there. That one looks good. And now this last guy. For the ground up here. Boom. So just like that, we've got our 4 solder points, and we'll give it a test and see how she goes here. Okay, now that we got that all soldered up, we can get the microscope out of the way. And now we can pull off the NAND chip. So it's this guy off to the side. Actually, let me set the camera up better for you guys. Okay, now we can pull off our NAND chip here. So it's connected to another heat shield. But again, a little bit of prying here, and it usually just comes right up. There we go. You can hear that double-sided tape under there ripping up. Perfect. So the only part you really want to be careful about is the connector here. So where it connects to the motherboard. So once that's off, it's actually a nice one. It usually pulls off that cover, and then you gotta put that back on there. Once you're there, now you're ready to take your chip and put your NAND module on there. So on the chip, there's all the ones I've been getting. There's a little piece of Captain tape there. So you just pull that off, and then you take your NAND module, and it just plugs right into that port. So I'll line that up gingerly. Clip it in, you'll hear it click. And then, ultimately, your chip is going to be placed right here. So the last step you've got to do is connect the ribbon cable. So this ribbon cable up here, right next to the port that's going to plug into your motherboard, you will ever so gently, I like to fold this cable up like that, just ever so gently. Push it in, close that connector, and then fold it down, and push it in, and you're ready to go. Then we can connect our battery, and if all goes well, when we turn it on, you should see some LEDs, which we do. Should flash blue for a little bit, and then if I hit all the solder points, we should see a green one here eventually. So a green one, flip it over. There's our telltale screen that we did it right. That's all there is to it, guys. Then we just got to put it back together, which I'll go over in a separate video just because this one's getting kind of long.